Whenever I practice, I continually remind myself that one moment of complete mindfulness and concentration demonstrates Kanika Nipan, momentary Nipan, momentary freedom from greed, hatred, and delusion. We can experience this moment by moment by moment in our practice. And when we do, we taste the freedom that will eventually be ours if we continue to practice. Today, I've invited Ajahn Bryan to give the Dhamma talk, and then at the conclusion of his talk and any questions, because we do have some new people joining today, I would invite anyone who wishes to stay on after the 11:30 or the official closing of this practice time to stay on, so I can get to know you a little bit better. Some of you are brand new to this group today. Others we've practiced for years. You're also welcome to stay, of course. And the room will be open for our use. Now, Pete, your practice time today will begin at what time?
So this evening, I'm doing a loving kindness meditation practice at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 7 Central time, 8 Eastern time. And this is a different practice than we practice here most oftenly, because we practice Vipassana here. And loving kindness is traditionally practiced as a concentration practice. My experience personally with loving kindness has been, it's been beneficial to me personally, and so I wanted to share that. I have a separate little room set up from this one, so if you'd like to join me this evening, just send me a message and I'll send you more details.
Great. Thank you very much. Ajahn Bryan, would you please deliver the Dhamma today?
Are you able to hear me? Okay, excellent, thank you. That little unmute screen kept popping up. So thank you, Ben, for the invitation to talk today, and good morning, and thank you to everybody who is here practicing. This morning I had the opportunity to talk with a meditator about what I consider a fairly important topic in meditation, and that became the inspiration for me today to talk in the Dhamma. And we had discussed the importance of adapting and the importance of learning to use the techniques we develop in formal meditation to be able to adapt them to day-to-day life to make a workable progress in even our everyday experience. So one of the traps for many people practicing meditation, and I'm speaking firsthand from this, I've been trapped there many times myself, is we can get very attached to the formal practice. We can find, for example, that rising and falling, following each and every footstep is not quite so easy to do once we get out of the temple or out of our meditation hall. And this poses a large problem for people because if you don't find ways to adapt the practice for day-to-day life, it is very likely that you'll abandon it. I have many times over the years heard commentary, including from myself, saying, well, I maintain moment by moment awareness in daily life, so I don't really need to do the formal practice. Or the opposite, I do my sitting and walking every morning, every evening, so there's no need to bring these practices to every day. But we really need both. We need to fortify and strengthen the qualities, our 5 faculties, through formal practice. This is like going to the gym, going to work out every day because you do it because it's good for you, because it strengthens you. In the same way, we set aside time in each day to formally observe our breath and formally observe our walking and our movement. If we happen to be in a retreat, maybe we have the option to observe things like our eating, especially in communal eating where everybody's quietly eating together. There's a certain kind of power that almost comes out of that when the conversation ends and everybody is completely and fully focused on just taking a bite. So having these powers that we develop in our formal practice, we come to the outside world and it seems really impossible sometimes to apply this. And I share a story, you've probably heard it before, and it's a spoiler alert, I'm sure you'll hear it again. I use this quite often. But this comes from a time early in my practice when I had first learned about Vipassana, and I had done maybe 1 or 2 retreats, and had heard a number of Dhamma talks urging us to take these practices to daily life. And you'll hear oftentimes when you're cleaning the table, just clean the table. When you're washing the dish, you just wash the dish. And so I said, okay, I got to figure out how to apply this to stocking shelves and doing customer service. How do you do that? And so my answer to this was that when stocking and cleaning shelves, I did it very, very slowly. I tried to note the reaching, touching of each and every bottle that I picked up, and the wiping, and dusting of every square inch of that shelf. And it did not take all that long to realize this was completely unsustainable. And I was going to not only burn myself out trying to maintain that type of attention in such a distracted environment, but my boss was probably not going to think well to pay me an hourly wage to slowly dust a bottle. So it became necessary to find out how can we make this practical, because we just don't have the option sometimes. So if we look into the source material, Satipatthana Sutta, I go to this pretty regularly. The Buddha outlines so many opportunities and so many ways that we can direct our mind to develop sati or mindfulness. And the very, very opening exercises are very simple. They're primarily relaxation and calming exercises of noting the breath coming in and out, noting the length of the breath, and just that's it. It's very simple. But he does also next go into postures of the body. Now, in formal meditation, we do pay attention to the posture. So, for example, when we're standing and we're getting ready to do our walking practice, we note to ourselves, standing. And depending on the method you're using, you may be scanning through the body and observing the sensations in the body as you're noting the standing. The same goes when we sit for our rising and falling practice, and we note to ourselves, sitting. We lay down at night, ready for bed or to take a nap, laying, and so on. So in these instances, we're able to pay very close attention again to the fine details of the posture. But sometimes we have to open, we have to spread the awareness out and use that as just something to check back into from time to time when the mind is busy. For example, if you're out in an open field and you can see a particular large tree, whether you're 1 foot from the tree or 500 feet from the tree, as long as you have that tree in sight, you know roughly where you are. Same goes for mountain. Ben's in Colorado, he's got lots of mountains. If you learn to recognize a particular mountain peak, no matter where you are, if you look, and you can see that peak, you have a sense of where you are. So in the same way, in this Vipassana practice we do, we get very conditioned to the fine, up close and personal, looking at the deep details of things, but sometimes we have to allow the mind to roam and take care of daily activities while still keeping an object in view. So this might be, for example, in a workplace, a busy workplace, maybe a restaurant. Lots of people work in restaurants. And you're rushing around and you're hustling and bustling and this and that. You're not going to be able to note lifting the tray and placing the spoon and all the different things. But you can keep a general sense that, upright. So you might note to yourself standing from time to time. You're walking through quickly, you're walking through slow, makes no difference than noting walking. There's a teaching that's given sometimes like the equivalent of keeping a buffalo tied to a stake. And if the buffalo is really, really, really close by compared to if the buffalo is allowed to roam. And this simile is used to describe the mind, that sometimes the mind is kept close and sometimes it's allowed to roam, but it's always kept in the pen. And it took me many years to really unpack that and understand that. But it's exactly what we do when we allow the mind a little bit more space. If we can check in from time to time with something as basic as walking, or standing, and then go back to our business, taking in everything that comes through the senses, allowing it to come and go. And then again, standing, and then go back to our business, or walking. We can find that touching in with this object from time to time will still keep the mind from straying too far. It's amazingly difficult, for example, if you are involved, I'll give as an example here, maybe I'm cutting some wood, cutting up some logs or something. So I might take the opportunity to note each motion in my arm if that's allowable for me at that time. If I have too many things to do, I just note to myself, working. And I continue with the process and I see all the different things coming and going as part of that process I call working. At any given point, if the mind begins to drift away, then again, working, and then go back to whatever I'm doing and continue in this way. It's amazing how often you'll catch the mind slipping off. And we're giving ourselves a really large area to observe when we're doing this. I mean, we have our whole practice open there, whatever we're happening to take care of, but the mind still finds ways to slip away. But if you can keep it anchored, working, sawing, whatever it happens to be, and check in from time to time, it's amazing the level of concentration that can build even in the midst of a very busy situation. From time to time, we run errands from the Hermitage. We have to go buy building supplies, things like this. So we might go to the hardware store, to the lumber store, something like that. There's a lot more distraction there. You look around, lots of eye candy, lots of interesting people, lots of conversations, a lot of fuss, a lot of noise on the overhead. But if you're there with the intention, you know, okay, I'm going to buy 2x4s today. You go to the 2x4s and all the rest of it is just seeing, hearing. As you move through the store, you're walking. The mind zips over, oh, that's a cool power drill. Walking. And so we allow ourselves these large objects, these wider places for the mind to run, If we can maintain this way throughout our day, we can allow just basic objects to keep us grounded, we'll find that when we come back to formal practice and we have opportunity to then sit quietly without distraction, walk quietly without distraction, that because the mind has stayed relatively present, it's much easier to get back into a clear, focused state. And our meditation will grow massively because of being able to maintain this. So another stumbling block that comes in here is using the correct words, or the correct type of noting. For example, the Buddha, when he talks about knowing the breath is coming in and out, knowing that one is walking, knowing that one is sitting, and so on, these are fairly straightforward. But what happens when a sensation, for example, arises in the body as all these things are going on, and you don't really know what to call it? It's undescript. It's something that you know that it's there, but you don't really know what to call it. Again, sometimes not being too super specific in those instances can be beneficial. If a strange sensation arises in the leg, note to yourself, leg, 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 and don't get caught up in the hamster in the wheel process of trying to find the perfect word for it. Or just note, knowing, 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 and continue to observe this thing until it makes itself more clear to you. You might then tease out, oh, this is itching, this is pain, this is whatever. This type of method, when we're practicing, can be a huge benefit to just allow ourselves to note things at the most basic level, because as we pay closer and closer attention, we'll find that they will reveal the information to us. Will become more clear with time. Another stumbling block also connected with day-to-day practice is giving ourselves permission to let go of these primary objects that we use. And for my own practice over the years, this has always been a big trick. Ben knows all about it. I've complained to him many, many times about my problem with letting go of rising and falling or various types of things that we pay attention to. But that's a really important aspect of insight meditation or vipassana, is not being stuck on anything. So again, in formal practice, we have that option. We rising, falling, hearing, 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 back to rising, falling. And sometimes we ride rising, falling for long periods of time with very few distractions. Again, day-to-day life, this is harder to do. So we have to become comfortable and give ourselves permission to note these other things clearly without feeling that we're doing something wrong. This is a huge problem for a lot of meditators, not just myself, where objects happen because we think, no, the real practice is when I'm aware of my breath. I have to be aware of my breath. I can't possibly stand here and be noting the heat on my face from the sunlight. Got to go back to that breath. We have no past and we have no future. When we see this in practice, it makes sense. When you're 100%, 100%, absolutely 100% with any object that arises, I don't care what it is, there is no past, there is no future, there is just that moment of clear knowing. There's no Brian, there's no Ben, there's no nobody. There's just the pure experience, sampajanya, the pure knowing or the clear seeing of this object. So there is no object we left behind and there's no object to go back to. There's what's happening currently. And in this practice, we learn more and more to let go and to let go over and over again. It's not always about building more concentration on something, but more letting go of all the other things that we're not allowing ourselves to let go of. If you let go of everything else but what you are experiencing directly in the present moment, you'll find the concentration there. You'll see the mind moving. You'll understand the mindfulness is there. You'll see the three characteristics, ever-changing phenomena. It's not ever satisfying and you cannot control it. And when it does change, which inevitably it will do, and it becomes boring, or something else arises that's more unique or more interesting, or it simply fizzles out, disappears, then okay, we go back to that mountain. We go back to that tree. We go back to the rising and the falling. So it's always there and it's always waiting. But we need to cut ourselves loose and allow ourselves to truly be free. And that means even in the noting process, to allow ourselves to clearly be with whatever comes, with no distinction, with no judgment, with no discerning other than knowing what is present in any given moment. And this is something that we can develop extremely well in daily practice because we have to, because the alternative is we don't practice at all. So my takeaway for what I'm saying today is I want everybody to feel, I guess, in a sense, give themselves the permission to modify the technique and allow the technique to show you how to apply it in day-to-day life without attachment to formal walking, formal sitting in day-to-day life. Sometimes we have to loosen our scope, take in the bigger picture of what we're doing, use more vague noting, but at least keep the mind present. And then do not neglect to use our formal practice to tighten things up, bring in the focus, bring the mind close in, and observe those really, really fine details that we can't really do in day-to-day life. And if we can maintain the sort of left and right hand in unison of these two approaches, we'll find that the practice will grow intensely, and our meditation will become very smooth, very successful, and we'll find it becoming also habitual to practice mindfulness in all postures at all times. So I hope that's of some benefit. I hope that everybody that is coming to practice will have great success. And because we do have some time, I would like to open up if there's any questions about anything I presented. And if not, then turn it back over to Ben and finish that by saying thank you to everybody for being present today. Ben, I think it's all about you.
Can you hear me, folks? Oh, okay. Wayne and I were talking about this particular technique of noting with words, and he was expressing some concerns about the words getting in the way of the noting. And I assured him that as long as you know exactly what you're doing at the very moment that you're doing it, and the words are just technique, just a tool to use to help you anchor to phenomena as it arises and falls. If you are fully aware of what's going on at the very moment, then the words can be helpful. But I found in my practice that when I drop the words, I'm noting even faster, even more things, even more phenomena are noted when the words get out of the way. And on the flip side of that coin, sometimes I find myself not sure that I am fully present. And that's when I bring the words back, to make sure that I'm right here, right now in my practice. The other comment I wanted to add and supplement to what Ajahn Bryan was talking about is that after years and years of practice, I suddenly noted that I didn't have to work quite so hard when I was away from my formal practice, that I was noting, and I knew that I was noting as I was going about my daily chores or other parts of my life. And I said, there was the fruit of the practice, that because of the continual effort, continual working on the practice day after day, suddenly you find yourself noting in all parts of your life. Not that it doesn't slip away and come back, but you have the techniques. And Ajahn Bryan talked about being flexible and letting go of perhaps rigid parts of your being, saying, oh, I must do it this way. No, you must continue to note. You must continue to be mindful. And that's where this practice is. All too easy to get locked into particular techniques of particular teachers. But the bottom line is mindfulness and the growth of your wisdom. And that's where we are in practice.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
Just to reiterate what you were saying, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was having those thoughts as Ajahn Bryan was speaking. On the Eightfold Path, effort is on that path. And this does require effort. The thing that I've discovered over the years is that in the beginning of my practice, when I first started, it took a great deal of effort to practice, to get into the habit of doing the meditation. And I would try this noting technique of not necessarily using words, but just being aware of whatever I was doing. I would get in the car and I would drive into town. I live out in the country, for those that don't know. And I'd drive into town and I'd be deliberately putting great effort in observing and noting every little thing and object that happened. And it was hard. It was very difficult to stay in that frame of mind. You just naturally slip back to what it was. But I can say this with confidence, that over the many years of practicing now, that now it doesn't quite take as much effort as it once did. It's almost habitual, the practice of meditating. And the other thing that I know, that attempt to be aware and noting of everything when I first started the practice, driving down the road, now it's become natural. So now I've noted that when I reach over and pick up something, I'm not noting with words. My hand is reaching, my hand is grabbing, and my hand is bringing the glass to my mouth. I'm not noting all of that, but I'm aware and paying very close attention to every motion and movement, and that just becomes natural. For me, it has, and I think that is just, or I know that, I shouldn't say think, I know that is from doing this practice. And so I just encourage everyone just to continue to practice. If you're having difficulty with that, it'll come. It takes time, it takes patience.
Takes the 5 faculties. Indeed, indeed. All right. Any other comments?
Unfortunately, my audio cut out, Ben, right as you started talking after my talk, so I missed the dialogue till I just came back. But Wayne, you had mentioned something that I wanted to definitely second, is that you find through the practice, through continual effort, continually applying yourself to it, that the growth is natural, and it does become very naturally kind of instinctive and habitual to start noting after a while. And you'll find, even without the words, just the most basic activities, you start to know clearly that you're doing them. Sometimes it slips in there. You don't realize how much the changes are occurring till you stop one day and you just go, wow, wait a minute. I'm noting these things that normally would have gone right overhead, or you would find yourself engaging these objects of frustrations or likings or the various things that come up. You find now you just know they're present, and it's quite an amazing process.
Right. One of the difficulties that I have is I do have with this oftentimes though is recognizing, being aware of what's going on inside of me soon enough. Oftentimes I become aware of it too late. Example. Example. So the other day I had to go into town, do a shopping errand, and I had my mask on. And I went into this hardware store, nobody wearing a mask. This is Kingman, Arizona, by the way. Nobody wearing a mask. And even the employees, cashiers, everybody, nobody's even wearing a mask. And I'm starting to build this frustration inside, this anger. I'm feeling it rise in me. But unfortunately, I reacted to it. And I realized later, after I'd left the store and gotten in the car and I was finally beginning to calm down, that why didn't I see that sooner and stop the anger that was rising in me? Why did I allow it to just grow? And it did. And I felt, it upset my whole day. My whole day was, as a matter of fact, I'm talking about it now, and this was 2 days ago, so it still bothers me.
I can see the heat rising.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's an excellent. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody was going to talk.
Sorry, I was just going to comment, Wayne. So, but the important thing is you noted it. You noted it's rising and falling, and how you're feeling now.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
In addition, what I'd like to say, Wayne, is there will come a time with continual practice that you will see the anger rising sooner and allow yourself the opportunity to choose how to react, so that the emotions are not in charge of you. You're in charge of just noting it. And sometimes when the passions are so strong, it can take days of noting, using the technique to give that the opportunity of that passion to be impermanent. We all know this is impermanent. We just have to allow time and continual noting of the rising and falling of phenomena. So be patient with yourself. Anger is one of the hardest ones because we've all experienced the lashing out that is really hard to come to grips with for most of us. So using this technique can be very powerful when you can actually see the noting helping you deal with these strong passions of greed, of hatred, of delusion. And because of the continual noting, we're continually retraining our minds, giving us another way of dealing with these very difficult things to deal with. Ajahn Bryan is locked in an environment where the irritations are reduced, but they're still there. They may be subtle, but they're still there. He's still dealing with them. And then once you deal with controlling the outside stimuli as you would experience in a monastic setting, there's still other stuff that's going to come. So this is one of the things that we will continually work on as we mature and grow in this practice.
I think in the monastic life, the big change as a monk is that you can no longer blame everything around you for why you're suffering. Now you have no choice but to realize you're carrying it and how to deal with that. Different.
Okay, well.
Ben, I had a question.
Sure.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Been reading Joseph Goldstein's book on mindfulness, and I think kind of his interpretation of practicing from the Satipatthana Sutta is interesting to me, that it has a little bit more of an active, strategic approach to say that you'll do like the body, like not even a body sweeping, but that really methodical meditation of, hair of head, teeth, skin, organs. That to me is interesting, because it's more of a strategic, proactive approach to say, I'll focus on my breathing, but now I'll pick up the 5 hindrances, for example, and I'll methodically examine, anger and desire and restlessness and things like that. Do you recommend that? I mean, it just seems that it has more of an active approach to say, instead of focusing and noting the breathing, and then as things arise, I'll note those things. I'm going to decide to really do a methodical examination of my form, and the same with consciousness and mental formations and feelings. Does that make sense?
It does. It's absolutely part of the practices that are recommended, Dan. However, what may work for you and Joseph Goldstein may not work for others, and that's at the bottom line of what Ajahn Bryan was talking about. Is try it, see if it works for you and helps you move through whatever you're sensing and experiencing. And if it works, use it. Don't grab onto it, but use it. These are techniques, and there are many techniques to use.
Yeah, I like his approach too, because I feel like it does dovetail with the practice that we've done and the teaching that you and Ajahn Chali have done, where it's, coming from Sayadaw Upandita and Mahasi Sayadaw, so the noting still makes sense. And I think it's an interesting little twist, an interesting little approach there. So thank you. I'll try that.
Certainly. Okay.
Ben, you usually ask me to do a quick meditation practice at the end here, and I'm just struck because, certainly we share conditions, but Ajahn Bryan and I are on the same page, because what I was thinking of today fits right in with this, I think, and that is my recommendation for a simple practice you can implement in your life is to take a chore that you do every day, like doing the dishes or taking out the garbage, or any number of things that you find is kind of a cornerstone habit, and apply our practice just before you engage in that. So for example, I'll use doing the dishes. Perhaps you walk for even just 10 minutes doing walking meditation, and then as you finish your walking, you walk up to the sink and you begin engaging in the dishes, and you continue to noting as you're walking. So now you're standing, and then as you pick up the plate, you're washing, because then what you're doing is, instead of ringing a bell and then stopping formal practice, you're walking out of your formal practice and into practical experience. I've done this a few times, and it helps me not be upset about some chore I have to do, or instead to just engage in its transience. And so I recommend that that is a way that you can bridge between this formal practice and your daily life, as Ajahn Bryan has wisely recommended.
Thank you, Pete.
And this is John. I would like to add one thing that all of this discussion has reminded me of, is that Ajahn Chali's teaching of no gaps. There's no gap. We're in constant refinement, but there's no gap between practice and regular life. It's all one thing. There's no bells in regular life. That's all I have.
And yet, I'm reminded of that wonderful story of Thich Nhat Hanh talking about using the stoplight as the bell of mindfulness, and the green light and the yellow light and the everything we do can be an opportunity for awakening right here right now, this moment. This moment. Once, Ajahn Bryan, would you please lead us in the metta?
May we abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may we maintain well-being in ourselves. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, and freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering, and may they not be parted from the good fortune they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are the owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action, companion to such action, and its results will be their homes. All actions with intention, be they skillful or harmful, of such acts they will be the heirs.
And paying formal respects to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Utang Bhagavantang Abhiwademi Sawakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami.